Moxie brethren became Benji Lavorre, cursed, Oathbreaker 2 times, covered in tattoos. His hair had actually gone back to black as well. He cursed out the colours from his hair, it was awful. Eventually they found out that Moxie Benji was now cursed in the afterlife as well, and that he would go down to be with Asmodeus, and he would be used as essentially like he would get turned into a creature or a monster and be used as part of the army and would be damned and have a horrible, horrible afterlife. And the only way to prevent this was to find another deity who would take him on as a paladin. The only problem was no deity would touch him. You know, Oathbreaker one time over is bad enough, but twice, no deity wanted to touch him. Soon wouldn't take him back because obviously he'd broken his oath to her, so he couldn't just bounce back and return. He needed a new deity. The DM went away and had to think about it, and there was only one deity who was willing to give Benji a chance, and that deity was Pelor. And the difficulty with that was that Pelor and Benji had quite different outlooks on the world. Pelor was very lawful good, you behave, you do this. He had like a dawn guard, I think, a group of people. You'll behave well and be righteous. And Benji was a bit more free. He was chaotic neutral, as most of my characters are. And so the idea of committing to a deity who was so sort of on the level and good and just, it was terrifying, but ever so slightly less terrifying than the afterlife that awaited him if he remained the way he was. So he came to Pelor essentially for judgment, and he had to ask Pelor to please take him on as paladin. And Pelor the deity said, I will, but I'm going to need some insurance. You fobbed off 2 gods already, you're an oathbreaker twice over. I'm going to need some insurance so that if you become an oathbreaker towards me as well, then you will have learned the lesson. And Benji said, okay, what do you need? I'll do it. And Pelor said, I need your other eye. I need your sight. And Benji was bewildered and said, well, so I can't fight. I can't do anything if I can't see. And Pelor said, you've got to trust me. You've got to trust me. That's it. That's the deal. If you want me to save your soul, that's it. You've got to surrender your second eye. And Benji said, okay. And he agreed. And so Pelor, it hurt, but it hurt less than the acid. Pelor used sort of divine light, and it burned into Benji's second eye. It burned it away, and Benji was left completely blind. He had no eyes in his sockets, and he was left. He took the eye patch off, and he was just left completely blind. And then Pelor gifted him a blindfold. I can't remember what it's actually called. I think it is a literal D&D magical item, but you put the blindfold on and it means that you can see through it, and you can see, you've got like extra magical sight, that kind of thing. And Pelor said, okay, you can wear this. While you're wearing this, you'll be able to see. It's blessed by me, you can see. But if you fail me, if you become a traitor, if you become an oathbreaker towards me, then it will fizzle out, it will stop working, and you'll be left blind. And Benji said, okay, I promise. I'm here, this is it, I will serve you as best I can. I won't get too much into the next bit because we had some very big plot points that hit. We had no downtime for a really long time. There was like several months of the campaign where we leveled up a few times and we fought loads of big people, and there was like spawns to the abyss popping up all over the place. And we had to go deal with a bunch of shit basically. And the new Benji Lavorre was doing it as a paladin of Pelor, and he was wielding the holy light, and wherever he went he was trying. He was trying very hard and not always succeeding. Pelor was very quick to punish him when he was doing things wrong. He was a bit of a wreck, but trying very hard to just do the best that he possibly could. And at one point he took a recreational drug and Pelor made him go blind for about an hour because that wasn't a very good thing to be doing at the time. One time Pelor took all of Benji's magical paladin powers away from him for about 24 hours because he spent a night at this, for lack of a better word, very dark adult entertainment venue where you pay to feel a lot of pain, because he felt very guilty over a lot of things. There'd been some horrible accidents. He'd got a lot of people killed at one point. They had been brought back to life, but there'd been a whole, like, he'd made a very big mistake and he was feeling very bad about it, and he was trying to do what Pelor was all about, like repentance and stuff, and he was thinking, but I need to be hurt in return. So, and Pelor said that's not the way to do things. That's not how you don't deal with it. You don't wallow like that. That's not how we deal with it. And he took away his powers for about 24 hours, and Benji had to come back to terms with that. And yeah, so him and Pelor it was not fun all of the time. The powers were great, the level ups were great, but the dynamic between the god and Benji was hard. It was very difficult for a chaotic neutral character and a lawful good deity. It was very tricky. But the plot went on, they fought more people, and eventually they had some downtime. So during their travels, Benji had tried to help out at all the different temples for Pelor. He tried to show willing everywhere. He'd been doing like good deeds, because he wasn't a bad person. He just, you know, grown up being slightly selfish and piratical. And the party had really helped him. They were his family now, and he was really trying to give good deeds and make other people happy, and trying to do that as best as he could. And that was the best way he could feel like he could serve Pelor without going off and joining the army and becoming a very, as he saw it, self-righteous, stick up your butt kind of guard. He was trying to do it sort of his own way, and there were ups and downs, but it did seem to sort of be working for the time being. Then they got a big chunk of downtime, and Benji decided he was going to go and hunt for Seb. In game time, we had about 3 months, I think, so we all told the DM what we wanted to do, and I said, all right, he's going to go and hunt for Sebastian. And it took a long time, and he had to go through different pirate ports, and he had to hunt down whispers of the Bloody Reaver, but eventually he came to the Bloody Reaver ship and he found him. The crew initially were, no way in hell are you coming on this ship. They did recognize him, and they were like, no way. But eventually he did get back in contact with Sebastian, and they sat down, and Benji told him everything. He told him about the cursed name, he told him what had happened, he told him he was so sorry. He wouldn't have killed him. He had no idea what he was doing. He hated him. He thought he'd left him. He wasn't sure, but he still loved him, and he was really sorry. And Sebastian listened, and he understood. Then after a moment of silence, they both had a drink. Moxie plucked up the courage and he said, so, are you single? And Sebastian said, no. And Benji, sorry. I even do it myself. And Benji felt his heart sink. Oh, okay. And then Sebastian just grinned and said, not now you're here. Sebastian told his crew a little bit and basically said, it's fine, it's all good. And they both went off on the Bloody Reaver ship, and they sailed for pretty much the rest of the downtime. So about 2 months they spent sort of rebuilding their relationship. There was a little bit of piracy that went on. It was like the good old days, and Moxie, Benji, my horizon and my land ahoy, they were insanely happy back together. And at one point, Moxie asked Sebastian if he would marry him, and the Bloody Reaver said, hell yeah! So Benji headed inland to go visit his aunt and tell her the great news. His skin was changing again now that he was aligned with Pelor. He wasn't completely back to himself. He was more sort of a humanish skin color, sort of less pale and sickly, more just sort of pale and sort of white glowy. And his hair was starting to go quite blonde and bright as well, but he put a stop to that by putting more colours back in it. So he had his rainbow hair back, he had the blindfold on with his magical eyesight, and he was looking better, different, still not his old self, but he was looking better than he was before. And so he went to find his aunt, and he came in to see her, and she was delighted to see him. She said, oh, how are you? And introduced him to the 2 children she had had while he'd been away. She'd had twins, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna be an uncle, oh my god. And his aunt actually said, well, if you like, you can be their brother. And Benji was absolutely over the moon and said, yes, I would love to be their brother. Essentially saying, yes, I would love to be your son. And then he told her that he was getting married. His aunt / new mom was over the moon excited for him, until he told her the name of the lucky boy. And he said, oh, his name's Seb, Sebastian Thor. He's amazing. I've known him since I was a kid. And then his aunt slapped him and said, say that name to me again. He said, Sebastian Thor. And she slapped him again. And she said, the Bloody Reaver, Sebastian Thor. And Benji said, ow. It was like, yes, I love him. I'm gonna marry him. Yes, you know him? Of course I know him. My party has tried to bring him into custody several times over the years. He's a wanted criminal. He's evil. He's an evil dread pirate. How could you be with someone like that? And Benji's shocked, and he's trying to defend himself, and he says, because I love him. He's amazing. And she says, well, you've been traveling with him, right? You know, you've been with him for a few months. Have you not seen what he does? And Benji's like, yeah, he's a pirate, but so was I. And she says, he's evil, he's damned like you were. If you get married to this boy, if you bind yourself to him, then his deeds will become your deeds, and all your good work with Pelor will be down the drain, and your soul will be damned along with his. He's going to be taken down, and he'll get pretty much the same fate that you were going to have, except it'll now be worse, because how much do you think Asmodeus would enjoy tormenting the 2 of you once you're both dead? And Benji panicked and said, I didn't know this was gonna, what? And he had no idea. And he said, but I love him. And she says, well, You can either stay here tonight, have dinner with me, and remain Benji Lavorre, or you can leave this house, go back to that evil man, and damn yourself as Scum the pirate. And when she said Scum, she was saying Moxie. And Moxie, Benji, just for the millionth time in his life, stood terrified and silent, weighing up the decisions he had to make. And then he said, I love you. You're my mom. I'm gonna save him. And he turned around and he left. And he left the house. And he went back across the land and he travelled, and eventually he went back to the meeting point where Sebastian was gonna pick him up. And he got back onto the Bloody Reaver ship and took Sebastian into the cabin and sat down and started crying. Sebastian said, what's going on? Was your aunt not happy? And Benji explained what had happened. And initially Sebastian just waved him off and said, oh, you live for today, live for this life. what does the afterlife matter? And Benji said, I've seen it. I've seen what they'll do to me and what they'll do to you if we're damned down there. I can't let that happen to you. I love you. I want to marry you. I want to be with you. I want to have an afterlife with you as well. I need you to give it up. I need you to stop being a pirate, or at least a pirate like this. And with some interesting persuasion rolls from myself, Benji started saying things like, but you could live in fame, not infamy. You could instead of having screams when they hear your name and see your ship, you could have cheers. You could change everything around you. It's not too late. It's never too late. I don't believe it's too late. You could change your ways, and together we could become like fierce adventurers instead of dread pirates, and then we can have an afterlife together as well. And Sebastian thought about it. And they spent another few weeks on his ship just sailing, and eventually Sebastian came to Benji one day, just threw an arm around him and said, okay, for you, I'll do it. Alright, but I've got to tell my crew. And Benji said, okay, do you want me out the way? Do you want me with you? And he said, no, whatever you want. And Benji said, okay, well, I'm with you. I'm with you always. And so they went out on deck, and Sebastian called his crew around him, and he said, alright, look, I'm done. I'm retiring. I am going to hang up the mantle of the Bloody Reaver. I'm going to leave this ship. You can elect a new captain, a new Bloody Reaver, continue my legacy, but I am leaving. And of course, this is decades of his father had passed on the captaincy, not the name Bloody Reaver, that was his own, but the captaincy, the legacy had been passed down and down and down in his family. He was supposed to pass it on again to a son or a child or somebody else, like a protege. He was supposed to pass this on. You can't just retire when he was probably about 35. You can't retire now. What are you doing? And the crew were not happy. They were raging mad, and they started drawing weapons. And Moxie Benji turned to Sebastian and looked at him, and Sebastian looked so disappointed in his crew and so upset, and he said, look, I want to leave, I want to retire. And his crew was saying, we don't believe you, this guy's been tricking you and he's been turning you against us. You're gonna go and steal all our treasure, because they had treasure sort of hidden at different points all over the globe. And the crew was saying, you know all the secrets, you could just go and try and take all the treasure for yourself. And Sebastian was saying, no, I won't, I swear to you, I won't even take my share of it, you can have it, I don't care. And of course that doesn't sound very piratey, so the crew don't believe him. Benji steps in and says, look, I can cast a truth spell and you can ask him all the questions you want and he'll tell you the truth. And they said, like, we trust your magic? You've just turned up here and you're taking him away from us. And eventually it came down to a roll for initiative. They were going to have a fight. And Moxie Benji and me, sort of in and out of character, sort of looked around and said to the DM, like, in the knowledge that I have, like, can we win this fight? And the DM said, like, honestly, no. Best case scenario, Sebastian's dead, everyone else is dead, and you bleed out on this ship. And I did not have enough on me to heal Sebastian at that point. And so I would have had to somehow survive the fight and then got the ship back to land all on my own, and yeah, it wasn't going to happen. So Moxie Benji, in an absolute terrified panic, just screwed his eyes shut and screamed in his head for Pelor to come and help them. And he begged him, and he heard nothing, and shing shing, all the swords are coming out on the crew, and Sebastian stood next to him and he's drawn his sword, and Sebastian's giving him a look that says, like, I don't want to do this, but I will fight every single one of you to the death. And Benji's just thinking, oh God, and he prays and he says, Pelor, please help us, please, 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 I'll do anything if you help us right now. And then it all goes quiet. Even the waves just stop and everything is paused, and Pelor has suspended time. And he doesn't appear, but Benji hears the voice, and the voice just echoes in his head, and it says, why should I help him? Why should I help this pirate? And Benji says, because he promised he's going to leave piracy, he's going to be doing good, he's going to do good for me because he loves me. And Pelor says, well, that's not good enough. Just doing it because of you, that's not enough. That doesn't make a good person. And Benji says, well, what can I do? Please, I'll do anything. He's going to be he's a good person. I know he's a good person. Please, please, please. And Pelor says, okay, what do you want? And Benji says, please just take us away. Take both of us away from this place right now. Put us on a spit of land. I don't care. Anywhere. Put us anywhere. Just please take us both out. Take me out and take Sebastian with me. Please help us. And Pelor goes very quiet. And then he says, all right, I will get you both out, but there's a condition. You claim that this is a good man. I need proof of that. So I will get you both out, but I will transport you both to different places. And I will wipe all of the memory from Sebastian Thor's mind. He will have no idea who he is, who you are, who he was, or what has happened to him. And then we shall see if he is truly a good person. And for 10 years, I will judge him. We will see if he truly does do good things without your influence. If after 10 years he has performed adequately, then you will be reunited. If, however, at any point during the 10 years he fails and is an evil, selfish, or bad person, then I will bring you together for a moment so that you may say goodbye, and then he'll be banished into his damned afterlife. Can I tell him? Can I tell Seb what's about to happen? And Pelor says, no, I need your decision now. So truly believing it will all work out for the best, and this is the only chance they have got, Benji just says, okay, do it. And as the world comes back into focus again, the waves start crashing and this pirate crew start bearing down on them, and Seb is holding his sword. Benji just reaches for Seb's hand and he turns and he says, I'm sorry, I love you. And Seb turns and says, I love you too. And then there's a blinding white flash of Pelor's holy light. Benji looks around and he is in one of Pelor's temples that he's visited before. He's quite into where the party are currently sort of hauled up when they're coming back together from their downtime. And he looks around and he can't see Seb anymore. And he just says, thank you. And this is another turning point for Moxie, Benji, in his character. He changes again from this point. He doesn't go back to how he used to be. He doesn't just sleep with anyone and everyone. He stops being flirty, charismatic. He becomes more dedicated to Pelor and holds up his side of the bargain, which is to be a good person himself. Benji believes, he wholeheartedly believes that Seb will do good things. He knows he's a good person. He spent a good chunk of their adolescence together. He believes Seb's going to be a good person. So he does good work for Pelor's temple for the rest of his downtime and then rejoins the party as they go off to begin what was the start of the final arc, fighting the big bosses. While they're traveling, in between the big fights and the plot hooks that they're doing, Benji decides to go to a jeweler's and he buys himself a very plain, very simple gold wedding band. And he wears it, not just of a symbol of his commitment and the bargain that he has struck, but also because he genuinely believes that in 10 years' time he is going to have his husband. And so that is what he focuses on. That is what he thinks of every time he draws a sword in battle. That is what he fights for. That is why he keeps going. It's why he does all the good deeds that he does. He knows that once they've both held up their end of the bargain, they will get the happy ever after. This is the part where we're actually going to get to the end of the campaign, which chops off the end of Moxie's story. So I will talk you guys up to the point where the campaign ended. Then I will tell you what I would have had Moxie do had we gone to certain points. We did manage to wrap it up okay, but I will also tell you just the alternative. About 2.5 years of in-game time rolls by. Benji's been working with the temples, he's been doing his good deeds, he's been fighting with the party, they're slowly gaining more levels, they're getting better, and they're getting ready to fight this massive thing that's a threat to the world. And they come to the city where his aunt/mom lives. And Benji goes back to visit her, but he is stopped at the gate and he is told that he can't come in because he is no longer a Lavorre. And his aunt has requested that he's not allowed to come in and he's not allowed to see the twins. And so he disappointedly but understanding, because she gave him an ultimatum and he chose Sebastian, he goes to a toy store and he buys some toys to send to the kids, and he writes a note and he says, can you give these to her? Will you pass these along to her? And the guards on the gate just nod and say yes. So he writes her a letter and he says, And he scribbles it out. He writes mom, scribbles it out, writes aunt, scribbles it out, writes mom, and then scribbles the whole thing out and just writes, I'm really sorry, but I had to try and save him. And then he details exactly what he did, what Pelor did, what deal he took, and what is happening now. And that in 7 years, 8 months, 1 week and 2 days, he hopes that she will come to his wedding. He starts to sign it Moxie, but it comes out as scum-sucking betrayer. He strikes that out and he starts to write Benji Lavorre, but then he strikes that out because he's not allowed to use the name anymore. And eventually he just writes Benji Thor. And that's when he decides that he's going to go with Sebastian's surname, because he believes that eventually that's the name he's going to be going by anyway. He gives a note to the guards. They pass it along, hopefully, to his aunt or mom, and he goes off with the party again. About another year of in-game time goes by, and Benji is having difficulties with Pelor again. He's trying his best, but they are still on very different wavelengths, and Pelor is not talking to him very much. He has done this one big thing for him, and he just expects Benji to just get on with it and do what he is supposed to be doing. He expects him to work things out for himself, to know what's right, to know what's wrong, and to do all the things. And the party have a lot of narrow escapes. I think at one point Benji very nearly did die, and he's getting more and more worried because he's thinking, oh my god, what if I die before I can finish this deal? What will happen to Seb? And he tries to ask Pelor, but Pelor won't tell him. He's getting very, very desperate and scared. And so he reaches out to Soon, his original deity. He's sitting in a rare moment of calm, and he sits and he just calls out to Soon and he says, I know that I abandoned you and I'm sorry, but I want to tell you that I'm sorry. And I wish I'd never left you. I wish I'd never met my mom. I wish I'd never gone with Asmodeus. I wish none of this had happened. I'm really sorry. And I know you won't take me back, and I wouldn't ask to, but I want you to know I'm sorry. And Soon does respond to him. And she essentially says, you're not forgiven, but you're understood. And Benji says to her, ironically, I feel like you might have been the best deity for me after all, because everything I've done, I've done out of love. Let's turn my whole life around. And he says, can you see him? Yes. And Benji says, look, I don't know the terms of this deal. I don't want to know where he is or what he's doing, but is he okay? And Soon just says, yes, he's doing good. And Benji's just completely relieved. So focused, so grateful, so glad that he doesn't notice Pelor's magic leaving him. And Moxie, Benji, inadvertently almost, becomes an Oathbreaker Paladin for the 3rd time.